Of comfort no man speak. Let's talk of graves, and worms, and epitaphs. With sorrow write bosom on the earth, and yet doth so. For what can we bequeath, save our deposed bodies to the ground? My name is Corse Payton. I lie here with my family. My father Joseph, my mother Elizabeth, my brother Center. I have 2 brothers buried on the hill over yonder. I made a fortune in my lifetime, and yet you will see no stone here for me. I am here with my family. I was the 4th son. The eldest, James, was a miner. Center, who you see before you, was an actor. Henry was killed in an accident at the Centerville Depot. And I was the 4th. I was born December 16th, 1866. I was named Corse after General John M. Corse, who my father served under in the Civil War, in the 6th Iowa Infantry. I had a rambunctious childhood. I was known as a town terror. When I was about 10 years of age, the Grand Army reunion was held on the Centerville Square. It was a day full of marching bands, veterans and soldiers, fireworks, cannons firing. There was almost too much excitement for the young lads of the community. Myself and 2 other lads had managed to secure an old gun stock. And with the meager savings that we had purchased some gunpowder. And the next morning, which was a Sunday, we decided to recreate the wonder and the excitement of the Civil War and the reunion that had been held on the square the day before. We snuck off into the woods early in the morning, and shortly thereafter, the entire town was shaken almost to its cellars. People ran from their homes, ran down the streets, wondering what had happened. Was the county under attack? What was going on? Someone said, "It's Corse Payton. He's in the woods. He's dead." My lifeless body was carried back to my parents' house. I had a tattered arm from the incident. I was covered in black soot and smoke, and everyone thought I had died. Some townspeople weren't actually that upset about it. When my mother knelt down to kiss me goodbye, I suddenly opened my eyes and I said, "That was a doozy, wasn't it?" When I was 14, there happened to be a circus that came through town, and I ran away with it. I wanted to get away from the small town. I wanted to pursue bigger things. I had big dreams. But I needed something to do. I'd always been a pretty good orator in school. I could sing a little. I could dance. Someone suggested that I do a little blackface routine, perform a little song and dance. Now, I'm not going to do that for you here tonight. But needless to say, I did manage to make a small living at it. I was gone about 5 weeks. My father, of course, was very concerned, came looking for me, found me over in Nebraska. I was in the middle of an afternoon performance. I looked out and I saw his face. And I could tell that he was not happy. I wiped the cork soot from my eyes, took off the blackface, and we walked down to the depot. And he said, "You're coming home." I said, "Let me pay for the tickets." I took a wad of cash out of my pockets, and he said, "Where did you get all that money?" I said, "I earned it." He said, "Doing what?" "Singing and dancing." I was always meant to be an actor. I paid for that train trip home, and to that day, he could never figure out how I could make so much money doing what I like to do. I stayed home for 2 years, but it didn't really sit well with me. Centerville was just too small for me. At age 16, I ran away with another circus. This time I took a lad with me. This time we stayed away for 5 months. We traveled through Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas. We joined up with a traveling troupe. We performed song and dance. We were on a train when Jesse James was there. We were in a small town when a lion escaped and scared the townsfolk half to death. It was an exciting time for a boy of 16, but it still wasn't exciting enough. About this time, Center, my brother, had decided to be an actor. And so I decided that that's what I was going to do as well. So with Center and other members of my family, cousins, we formed a traveling company. We traveled Iowa, Nebraska, and Kansas. And we instituted the 10, 20, 30-cent seats. Any seat, anytime. 10 cents, 20 cents, 30 cents. I would use that for the rest of my life. It was during this time that I learned the business of theater, learning how to build sets, props, costumes, learn lines, be an actor. And about this time I became partners with F.E. Spooner. I tired of the family routine, and he and I traveled together with a company that we formed. And at the end of the season, I had $2,500 left. It was burning a hole in my pocket. I decided I needed to go to New York. I went to New York. I bought the biggest, loudest checked suit I could find, the biggest flowery tie, a big hat, and I decided I was going to wine and dine directors and actors and producers, and I was going to make a name for myself. Well, of course, they were more than happy to take the money from a young Iowa farm boy who was not wise in the way of the world, and I was surprised at how quickly my money vanished. I didn't know where my next meal was going to come from. And I went back to these same people that had been so happy to take my money and eat with me and drink with me. None of them would offer me a job. I finally found a manager who said, "Well, I can't offer you work here in New York, but I do have a job for you. I can send you as a troop manager to Texas." He gave me an advance, and I went to Texas and started a troop there. I was very lucky. That was where I met Miss Etta Reed, who became my wife. She was an actress. She was a farm girl. She was from Ohio. She looked like the girls that I knew from home, and it was love at first sight. She became the leading lady for my company, Corse Payton Comedy Troupe, and we married in 1890. And as I said, she became the leading lady for the Corse Payton Comedy Troupe. And I continued to stick with the 10, 20, and 30-cent seats. That had worked for me, and it continued to work for me. In short order, I had enough set, costumes, props, that I had a boxcar that I filled full of these things and traveled around the country with. At this time, I also bought several theaters. And it was about this same time that I, with the help of a local townsman, built the Armory Opera House, which later became known as the Drake Avenue Theater. And while the theater was being constructed, Ed and I went to New York and started a company there. We came back to Centerville. I was going to come back as a hometown hero. I was going to come back and perform for the people who had born and raised me. He was going to come home and be the proud son of Centerville. We just brought a play over from Europe. It was a great comedy. Came in, did the show. Everyone was excited to see this show. We were excited to perform it. We were doing the show. My father was in the back of the audience. And the opening act went out, and there was absolute silence. Places where there should be laughs, there was no laughs. There wasn't a peep coming from the audience. And they thought, well, maybe they're waiting for Corse to come out. He's the hometown hero, maybe they're waiting for him. I came out, performed my first line, which should have been a tremendous laugh line. It was nothing. I was horrified. I didn't know what to think. I'd let my family down, I'd let my friends down, people that I knew. I managed to finish the act, went into the dressing room. Etta tried to console me. I said, I don't know how we're going to get through this. I don't know what's going on. The entire company was just, we were aghast. We didn't know what to think. When the show finally rang down, the curtain closed, I could hear my father coming down the hallway to the dressing room. And I didn't know how to face it. I was a failure. I didn't know what he would think of me. He came in to me and he said, what did you think of that audience, son? He said, well, it was big. He had by this time become the sheriff for Appaloosa County. And he had decided that he was going to tell everyone that they were not to make a peep, not to make a sound, they were not to clap, they were not to in any way embarrass him in front of his son. And I did not know what to think. I said, I thought that they were Episcopalians at a church meeting. But I lived through it. I went back to New York, and at that time, we took over a vacant theater, which had been known as the Lee Avenue Theater, and I renamed it the Corse Payton Lee Avenue Theater. I bought it for $5,000, totally remodeled it, and while the theater was being remodeled, we performed at the Opera House, various other locations in Brooklyn. Manhattan had always been the Great White Way on Broadway, but there were twice as many theaters in Brooklyn as there were in Manhattan. We had opened this new theater, and it was a huge success. Corse Payton and Company, the 20th century theatrical miracle was how we billed it. We played there for 10 years. We performed 2 shows a day, 6 days a week. I employed 30 actors, and at 30 cents, the audiences were getting a penny an actor. That's what I used to tell them. All of a sudden, vaudeville came into the picture and started taking its toll. We instituted musicals and comedy routines, trying to keep the shows fresh, but the audiences just weren't there anymore. It was about this time that a cartoonist named T.A. Dorgan, who went by the initials TAD, christened me as America's best bad actor. I was always willing to take any advertisement, even free, even if it meant that I was being called a bad actor, so I took it and lived up to it. And he used to put little phrases at the bottom of his cartoons going, Corse Payton, now appearing nightly at the Gowanus Canal Opry House. And I would take that. I would perform. In 1905, I built a hotel in Williamsburg, which is a suburb of Brooklyn, because I couldn't find a hotel suitable enough for Etta and I to live in. And I also built a beach house out in Far Rockaway, New Jersey. I used to entertain high society there, royalty from Europe. In 1912, business began to suffer. And in 1915, Etta died. Lee Avenue Theater closed that same year. I moved to Manhattan, to the 14th Street Academy of Music. There I met an actress named Henrietta Brown, and we married. But things just weren't going well. Vaudeville was taking over. Live theater was no longer viable. It was dying. In 1921, I was bankrupt. I owed $9,000 and had no assets. There were some great actors who used to work for me. Ed Wynn, Lillian Gish, Mary Pickford, Dick Bennett. They had all moved to Hollywood to work in the silence, but I wanted to stay with theater. I managed to build one last theater, Keeney's Theater in Newark, New Jersey, but that soon became a movie house as well. In 1933, I suffered pneumonia. I was hospitalized for quite some time, and I recovered, went home briefly. 2 weeks later, I developed heart disease, was hospitalized again, and I died February 23rd, 1934, at the age of 67. One of the obituaries said that I had made $100,000 a year, but at the end of my life, I didn't know where my next meal was coming from. I was an actor both on and off the stage. Henrietta died in 1958, an actress to the end. She remains buried in New York. 'Tis now the very witching time of night, when churchyards yawn, and hell itself breathes out contagion to this world. Now could I drink hot blood! But I must now off to my grave, to sleep, perchance to dream. And in those dreams of death, what dreams may come, when we get shuffled off a little quiet. And in the end, when we have strutted and fretted our hour upon the stage, it only signifies